like to apologize beforehand for the frumpiness of my nature today. It's Memorial Day, kind of been out and about, running around, doing things, and we've got family incoming this weekend, so I've been cleaning up the place, trying to make it look good. I actually saw this on Thursday. I'm putting this video up on Monday, but I actually saw this on Thursday, and Future Past has a lot to live up to because it's one of the most well-known X-Men comics, or it's a very well-revered X-Men comic, and it's also following up on the heels of Matthew Vaughn's X-Men First Class, which came out 2 years ago, I think, something like that. And very much like I did with Godzilla, once I reached a certain level of excitement and hype and I was ready to go see it, I stopped watching trailers, I stopped reading about it, I wanted to just go in and experience it. Whether or not that paid off, I'm still kind of debating, because I walked out of Future Past liking it just fine. It's pretty Bryan Singer, and by that I mean, he's got good character stuff in there. There are definitely good arcs that the character, quite a few of the characters go through, but once you start thinking about the plot, even for a second, if you start thinking about the plot all in the movie, the whole thing, just crumbles in your hands. And even, his movies are already kind of like that, but now we're getting into, time travel. The plot of the movie is that these robots called the Sentinels, that specifically target mutants, are basically, have ruined the future. And so, as a last-ditch effort, the last remaining mutants send Wolverine into the past to try and prevent the Sentinels from ever being made into what they are. So already you're gonna get loopholes and continuity errors and things like that. And they've kind of joint grouped together the previous X-Men movies and these new ones with James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender. And that was already a problem in First Class, because there were already issues of continuity. Wolverine is kind of, for once, he's kind of the side supporting character. I've always said that in all the X-Men movies, they're all Wolverine movies, but for once he's actually kind of an afterthought in the movie. We get a lot of new characters that get introduced and then they just fuck off for the rest of the movie. We don't see any of them really. They'll show up for one scene, maybe two, and then they're gone for the rest of the movie. And then it's just back to the same old stuff that we've seen before. Like Toad and Havoc, and there's some that I've never seen before. There's a guy that just waves his hand at you and he makes you throw up. Just puke! There was all of the ones from the future, which, by the way, Bryan Singer, I think we're done with the... I feel like Bryan Singer is still in the 1990 or the early 2000s mentality that in terms of visuals, because he still seems to think that the black leather on black leather getup still looks cool, and it looks really outdated. It was outdated when The Matrix did it, but now it's when the future mutants are in these all black get-up outfits, and it's supposed to be a dystopian future. You'd think they'd be a little more ragged, but they're in these movie quality suits. Again, time travel, whatever, but there's things that just don't, not even out completely removing the fact that it's time travel. There are just things that there's too many things that you're asked to just hang up and forget to not think about, like the fact that Kitty Pryde has the power to walk through walls. She can phase through matter. And that's been established through several movies now. And then in this movie, she has the ability to transport people's consciousness into the past, and that's how they send Wolverine back. But it's not explained. They don't even mention it. They just do the movie as if it's been that way the entire time. And it's just bewildering, because it's kind of where did she get this? They don't even, not even one of the characters asks, you can do that? Or, how are you doing that? Or anything like that. It's just yeah, she's always been able to do this. When it's no, she has not. Also, why are you sending back Wolverine, the least qualified of the entire group, the most, brutish person in the entire group? Why are you sending him back in the past? Shouldn't it be Xavier? Xavier should have been the one to actually, send someone back. I know, and I've read in the comics that it was, a time machine. Whatever, that's dumb. And then there's also just they give past Charles, they give the 1970s Charles like a because if you recall from the end of the first movie, he got shot and he was crippled. He couldn't walk anymore. And then in this movie, he's just up and about and walking around like it's no big deal. They give him this side story where like there's a serum that like they don't even really explain. They just say like, oh, he takes this serum and as long as he keeps taking it, he can walk, but he loses his telepathy. And if he stops taking this, this drug or whatever, then he'll get his telepathy back, but he'll lose his legs. And it's like, that is the stupidest thing I've heard in a long, long time. That makes absolutely zero sense. You could not ask me to suspend my disbelief with the biggest fucking crane in the world. Like, that's just not how... That's not genetics, that's a bullet in your back, or a bullet hole in your spine. That's not genetics. They're not linked in any way, shape, or... It's stupid. It's ridiculously stupid. And the only reason they gave him that is so that he can have some kind of an arc in the movie. Because he has to make the decision of like, oh, well, I could find what we need if I had my telepathy, but I don't want it. And he has to choose like what he wants versus what's right. And that's the only reason. The only reason is for him to have some kind of an arc. When really, there already is a perfectly fine arc that could have been used. At one point, the two Xaviers are talking to each other, which in a really complicated, roundabout way that could have been made way simpler. But they're talking to each other via telepathy, and younger Charles is, or I'm sorry, the older Charles says, "You're not afraid. Like the reason why you're avoiding your telepathy is not because you're afraid of other people. You're afraid of yourself." And it's like, that would have been a perfectly fine arc right there. That you could have just had Wolverine go back and past and be like, "Oh, just use your telepathy," and go, I can't figure out why," and have it be that he's subconsciously like repressing himself. That's a thing that makes sense. The whole reason he establishes the school in the first place is to teach mutants to control their ability, to get past that and accept themselves. Having him learn that from Wolverine would have actually been like pretty clever, but instead they do this whole like stupid drug thing. There's even a scene where like he's sitting there shooting up and his friends are like, "Don't do it, man, don't do it." And it's like, oh, this is really like weird and unforced. It just could have been done way better. I'll also say that the effects in the X-Men movies have always been kind of wonky. They go back and forth from like looking really good in X-Men 2 to being really bad, like in X-Men Origins Wolverine. In this, again, they kind of go back and forth. Like, the post-credit scene looked really, like PlayStation 2, almost PlayStation 2 bad. But then there's scenes like when Magneto is ripping a train track apart, and it looks really good. By the way, speaking of X-Men Origins Wolverine, that's not canon anymore. The greatest thing that this movie did was it erased, it pretty much just like cleansed the series of X-Men 3 and X-Men Origins Wolverine, which were the absolute... I mean, I know that they're talking about the Sentinels, but you get the sense that the director and the writers were kind of being like, we need to get rid of X-Men 3. We need to go back and stop that from happening. There's even a moment where young Charles is, he's getting hints of his telepathy back, and he goes and he reads Wolverine's mind, and they show flashbacks of X-Men 3, and Xavier's just like, "Oh, you poor man." And I was just sitting there like, yeah, I know, it was horrible. Deadpool didn't even talk in the Origins movie. Really, it just, what it comes down to is that it's a fun movie. It's much more of what you think a X-Men superhero, or that's what a superhero movie is. Just kind of fun. It doesn't match First Class even a little bit, because First Class was fun, but it was also very classy. Get it? Class. By the way, what they set up in this movie, Days of Future Past, what they set up to be the catalyst for the Sentinels going online is the death of a political figure played by Peter Dinklage, who does really good, by the way. But that took place in the 70s. And supposedly they're going to go back and they're going to stop it from happening so that way the Sentinels never get approved. But keep in mind, in X-Men 1, Magneto took over the Statue of Liberty and tried to mutate people into mutants in X-Men 2. The opening scene of X-Men 2 is Nightcrawler trying to assassinate the president. My point is that there are plenty of times in the previous movies where the Sentinel thing that could have triggered the Sentinels going online, like being approved. Why only this time in the 70s are the Sentinels like being considered? I don't know. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about was Quicksilver. They introduced Magneto's son as Quicksilver. He has one scene and then he just ejects the movie altogether. Like he's kind of the Jet Li in Expendables 2 for this. Wow, that was a weird reference to pull out of my ass, but and he was one of the best parts of the movie. He's written really, really well. I like the actor that plays him. They do really cool stuff with his powers. It's just that he's fast. Nothing terribly clever, but the way they utilize it, there's a lot of wiggle room. You can get really creative stuff, and they do. But I think that they realized really quickly, it feels like they wrote out that, if you've seen the movie, you know what scene I'm talking about. It feels like they wrote out the scene, and then they realized, oh, Quicksilver could beat, like, anybody in this movie. If we keep him around, there's not going to be any stakes in the action. He'll just solve it in like 3 seconds. We better just write him out of the movie, and then he's just gone. So I think they had him eject the movie because they realized like how ridiculously overpowered he was. But yeah, I would still say go see it. It is worth seeing. Just go into it with like slightly tempered expectations. Don't expect it to match or to beat X-Men First Class because it's not going to. But for what it is, it was a good X-Men movie. What it comes down to is that it just kind of erased all the bad movies, and it more or less just kind of promises a better X-Men movie to come. Because now they want to do Apocalypse. It'll be nice to, again, I think that Matthew Vaughn is more suited to directing the X-Men movies than Bryan Singer is, but even so, it will be nice to see a different X-Men story being played instead of just Charles versus Magneto for the umpteenth time. So, yeah, that's it. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go do some other stuff, and I'll see you guys around next time. Bye!